right, I'm going to start by creating a brand new list, and we're going to call our list the campus shuttle. And I'll save my changes. Now let's go ahead and let's add in a few columns. So I'm going to go in a column for my origin location. I'll save it. I will add in another one called destination location. Actually, we'll call this one destination name. And I'll create another one for the location. And then I'll create another one for choice, for status. And I will just have two choices here. One will be hired and one will be en route. Save our changes. Okay, this is what we're going to use to store the status of all the different drivers on our campus. And in my scenario, I was going to use a university campus. So what I'm going to do is come back over to my, my terminal. And I'm going to start by creating a new folder where I want to store my shuttle or store my project. And then I'm going to go ahead and launch the Yeoman generator for the SharePoint framework. Now I'm going to choose the default location for my solution or the default name. I'm going to choose I want to create an adaptive card extension. And then I'm going to use the primary text template and I'm going to name it the campus shuttle. Now, after provisioning the files and folders required for the project, the generator is then going to install all the dependency packages by running npm install automatically. And when npm completes downloading all the dependencies, I'm going to open the project up in Visual Studio Code. Now, the ACE that we're going to create is going to give the shuttle driver the option to either select a destination from a list of known locations, or they're going to be able to select to a specific point on a map. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and create a list of places that they can choose from. So I'm going to go to my assets folder and I'm going to add a new file called campus locations.json and paste it into the project for all the array of locations. Now, each one of these locations should have a name or a title, should have a latitude and a longitude associated with it as well. You can create your own, but I'm just going to use these from a known university. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a service to our project to read from and write to a SharePoint list. So I'm going to go create a new file in our project called spservice.ts and just paste this in. And this method, this function or this service is just going to have a way for us to get a specific item from a SharePoint list, as well as how to upsert items. So either create or update an item in the list. So we're not going to go through all the code for that because it's pretty boilerplate how to read and write to a SharePoint list. What it did do though, there's one thing that it did have is that it did have a couple different class statuses that we could use as well that are going to be expected as the different choices that we have in our SharePoint list. Now, the next thing that we need to do is our project has some core dependencies that have been added to it. So now let's implement the initialization of some core features when the ACE is going to load on the page. And that involves configuring the state of the ACE and enabling the user to set the ID of the list that contains the driver trip detailed information. So if I come over here to my extension, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to add in on the title the list ID as a property that we're going to want to define and let the user set. On the property pane, I'm going to go in and add in another value for this as well. So we'll have our title, and this will be the list ID, and the title for this will be the list ID, which will be a GUID, be expecting a GUID. And then what I'm going to want to do is if I go back to my extension, whenever that value changes for the list ID, I'm going to implement the on property pane field changed event. so that when the ID changes, I'm going to go fetch all my list items and update them in my current trip. Now, obviously, we haven't set our state yet. We've got to do that. We've also got to import some stuff as well for our service. So let's come back up to the top and let's add in an import statement to import in the values from our service. And then I also want to set the state to a current trip, which will be an iList item that will pass in. Now, once we've set our state, we then need to be able to, initialize the state. So I'm going to do that by coming over here and setting the initial state for the component when it loads. Before it's fetched any data from the SharePoint list, I'm going to set the current trip equal to the title of the current item is going to be this.context.page.context.user.login name. That's the title that we're going to use. The title field for our list is going to contain the current user that's using that's logged in. So it's going to be their email address or their UPN. Their status is going to be set to status of being available because they currently aren't set on a trip yet. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to add some additional code here to our on init to go fetch those things after we've gone through and registered our views. So I'm going to come down here before we finish our promise, and I'm going to say if you have a list ID set, then go try and fetch it and then set that value if we got the trip out of it. So if we did not get a list item, then that means the driver is not currently on a trip. If there is one there, we are going to display that. Do we know that they are currently either en route to pick somebody up or they're on the way to deliver a passenger somewhere. When they are no longer in a trip, we're just going to delete the record. And because we're using the await keyword, I need to add the async keyword to our on init method, which we can do because we already have a promise that's being defined. Let's see, what else do we want to do on this one? Let's scroll. I think we're in pretty good shape there. All right, now the next thing we want to do. The last step before I test this out is to remove our current quick view. Later, we're going to add in a bunch of different quick views to our ACE. So I'm going to start by removing it from our extension. So I'm going to say quick view, we'll delete it here. I'm going to delete my export statement to it here. And I'm going to delete my registration to it for the quick view as well right here. And then in the quick view, I'm going to delete the JSON file because I'm not going to be returning that. Move that to trash. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this quick view class as well. Move that to trash. And then the last thing is let's go to our card view that references this. And we know we're not going to use our quick view right here, so I can delete that. We'll put these on separate lines because we will be adding lots of quick views to this one. And I'm also going to want to remove our external link because we're not going to use that action. And we're also going to remove our quick view action right here as well for right now. We removed the ID for it already. And the next thing I'm going to do is, let's do another import statement for status. Oh, let's just go to from SP service and let's say status available. We're going to use that in this class. And then let's update our card buttons right here. And we're going to replace it with a switch statement that is just going to return back no button for right now. We're going to add to this as we go through building this exercise out. And then as far as the data goes, well, the data we're going to bind to our card view is going to have primary text associated with it. That's going to be set to the primary text of our component. The description property is going to be set to this. If the status is available, then we're going to say it's available for hire. And then otherwise, we're going to have to do this to do, which we'll fill in later. And then our card selection, we're not going to support the user selecting the card. So we're just going to delete that. Now let's go ahead and let's test our ACE out at this point. So I'm going to say gulp serve no browser. And let's come back over here to our project. We'll refresh the workbench and let's add in our campus shuttle. And there we go. We can see our campus shuttle is here and I can go edit it and grab the ID for our list. So we'll see this in the future. Settings, 7B, right to 7D, and then it goes right up to the %. So So grab that and we'll paste that in. And there we go. We're good. Saving our changes. So now we're all good. Now, nothing's really changing in the rendering because we don't have any records in the list yet. So at this point, the minimal stuff is working and I can start adding interactivity to the ACE with the different quick views. So what we're going to do first is we're going to add the ability to create a trip with a quick view. So when they create a trip, they've got three things we need to set: the origin or the start location for the trip, the destination of where they're going on the trip, and then if the shuttle driver is en route to pick the passenger up from an origin location, or if they've already picked the passenger up and they're on their way to the destination. So to implement this, I'm going to create multiple quick views and use the geolocation capability of ACEs with adaptive card extensions. So I'm first going to go through and create the quick view for starting a trip. So I'm going to come over here to my quick view, and in the template folder, I'm going to create a new file called trip start card. And I'm going to go paste in a bunch of JSON that's going to define our adaptive card. And then because we have our start trip card, I'm going to create a new file here in our quick view called the starttrip.ts file. So what is this one going to do? Well, let's just go ahead and I'm going to copy in some code here on how this works. So a couple things to point out about this one. The data that I'm returning back, this returns the object to the ACE rendering engine that's going to be used to bind properties to the adaptive card that are used to implement the quick view. The template tells it where the card's where the adaptive card extensions is defined. And then the onAction method is called when certain actions occur. So at this point, the code simply is going to save the value of the trip en route and hired and contain the placeholder for more quick view cards that I'm going to add to the project here. So you can see we're just going to save the card, and then all this other stuff we're going to go through and deal with later. Now, to make my life easier, because I know I'm going to have a bunch of cards here, I'm going to simply create a barrel, so an index.ts file, where I'm going to export everything from my start trip. This is just going to make it easier to do import statements later. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to register and reference our start trip quick view. So I'm going to come back over here to our project or into our extension. And let's start with an import statement. And we're going to import from the quick view. And this is what's going to make it easier for us to import stuff later. I'm just going to import our start trip. Now, let's define a new constant that we're going to export for our start trip experience, our quick view experience. So now we have our new ID that we've listed. I'm then going to go in and on init, I'm going to register our quick view. I'm going to register it right with, not duplicate the last line. I'm going to register it like this. And then I'm going to add it to the card view. So let's come back over to the card view, and I need to import the ID for that quick view that we just created. And in my card buttons that we see right here, let's grab this ID. And what I'm going to do is that for the first condition, I'll say case status available. I want to return a single button. The title of the button will say book a trip, and the action is going to be of type quick view, and the parameters, I'm going to set the view equal to that view that we just registered. What I'll do is I'll stop the build and then rebuild it. Or stop the web server and then rebuild the entire project. And now that the project is running, I'll come back over here to my workbench and let's add the shuttle back to our back to the page. And we need to make sure we have the ID for our list. And now when I switch it over into preview mode, if I select book a trip, I now have this new quick view that's going to display our little form. So we can say if the status is we're en route to picking somebody up or starting the trip. And then I can also choose from these different buttons like selecting the trip origin or the destination or saving the trip. But we don't have any functionality here. We're just displaying this. So now we need to add our functionality to it. So I'm going to go back over to my project, and I'm now going to add 3 quick views that are going to be used by the start trip quick view. One's going to handle setting the origin location of the trip. Another handles the selecting or setting of the destination for the trip. And the last one acts as the confirmation notice when I save the trip. So I'm going to go into my template folder and create a new folder, a new item here, new file called my set origin card. And I'll go ahead and paste all this JSON in. And the part that I want you to notice here really is just this action at the very end, where the origin, I'm going to be specifying the get location for the type, and the parameters I'm setting is the choose location on a map. Okay, so it's the only thing that's really interesting about this one. Then I'm going to come over to create a new quick view. So I'll add a new file. It's called setorigin.ts, and I'll paste in some code. So what this one does is that for my set origin, it's going to return back just some information about the current trip. So it's the state of the trip, current state of the trip, the title, and the description. And then on the template, it's going to point to our card that we just created. And then on the action, when someone selects that get location, I'm going to get the current trip from the current state. I'm going to then update it to set its origin location equal to the location of the action, which is a get location action. And I'm going to set the latitude and longitude to the respective properties and then save the trip and then pop this item off of the quick view. So what we're going to see in a second, the view navigator, we're going to push a new item onto the quick view, which will render out the card that we're talking about right now for setting the origin. And then once I've made those changes and want to remove that card, I'm going to pop it off the view navigator. Now I want to implement a similar quick view for setting the destination. So I'm going to come back over here to my template, and I'll set a new one for set destination card.json. And for this one, I'll paste in his JSON. In this case here, you can see that we're able to get a location on the map the same way we did just a moment ago. That's one thing we want to do, but I also have just a submit action to save my changes. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm also giving people the ability to select from a choice set a list of predefined locations. And we did that earlier when I created my campus locations resource earlier. So now let's create the quick view for this by going over to our quick view and creating a new file called setDestination.ts. And I will paste in my quick view. So let's give ourselves a little bit more real estate to see what's going on. And let me explain what's going on here. So in this case here, the data that we'll return back is I'm going to return back an array of sorted locations that I'll bind to that choice set. I've also got the current trip, and then I've got the title and the description I'm setting as well. Scroll down a little bit farther. We're defining the adaptive card that we want to use for our rendering. And then in the on action, if someone sets the location, I want to update the trip to use those geo coordinates that they selected. But otherwise, if they just click submit, then what I want to do, and if the submit button was set to a save, I'm going to check to see if we have a known destination selection, right? If that was actually passed in and it was set to a value, which if I come back over here to my card, we can see that's the ID of my choice set in my adaptive card extension or my adaptive card rendering. So if one of these values is set, then it means that they've actually chosen a location. And if they did, then I'm going to convert the known location, which the known location selection, the value that I was passing in, if we scroll up here, you can see from the data that we passed in, actually, where's the data is, oh, there's the locations right there. So there's the locations that are being passed in. And if I look at the locations, the way they're being rendered out is latitude, longitude with a comma between the two. So that's why in the destination, what I'm doing is I'm splitting up this array of the known destination into two different things. So we have the latitude, longitude, and the two different ones, but we're expecting these to be numbers. And so I'm going to convert those strings over to numbers. Once I've got that for the destination location, I'll take the selected location here and set that, also go fetch out the title of the one that they selected. And I'll set that to the destination name now that I know what that is, save my changes, and then pop him off of the quick view navigator. The last thing we do is I want to show how to save this item. So let's come back over here. I want to confirm that we're going to save it. So I'm going to say save trip card.json. Actually, there's one more that we forgot to mention, and that was our action down here at the bottom. So you can see here where we're setting the state here for these items. Now the last one is we want to have our saving of a trip. And to save a trip, all we're going to do is this is just going to be a confirmation card that's just going to say that let somebody go through and save. Let them actually make a save to the trip that they've actually created. So I'll then implement that by going to our save trip, or creating a save trip quick view. And we'll add some code to this, and we'll see that just saying the trip was saved successfully. Here's the card we're using, and we're just going to close the entire quick view. We don't want to pop anything off the quick view because there's nothing really to show. Once they've saved it, we can get rid of it. Now, to use all three of these that we've just created, let's go back to our barrel and let's add in references to each of these. So we've got our save trip, we've got our setting the destination, and we also have our setting of the origin. So now we're exporting all of those. And now when we come back over to our extension here, we're going to have to register all of these and create the constants for them. So I'll say start trip, save trip, set destination, and set origin are all of our different quick views that we have. We then need to go in and specify the IDs for these that we'll export. So we have our origin, our destination, and our save trip. And then finally, we'll register all of them in the quick view navigator. All right, so now let's go through and let's implement these. So I want to do this all in our start trip. So I'm going to go to our start trip, and I'm going to go through and import our references to all of our new quick views that we just created. So one for the destination, one for the origin, and one for saving. And now if I scroll down to our on action, let's define what happens here. So for the first one, for the origin location, I'm going to say this quick view navigator. So this is when they click the button and say, I want to set the origin for the trip. So I'm going to do that by saying I'm going to push onto the quick view navigator, the quick view set origin location. And then for the destination, I'm going to do the exact same thing, except I'm going to choose the destination ID that I want to specify. And then for the save, same thing. I'm going to say this quick view navigator dot push quick view navigator save the trip and save our changes. Notice how each one of these pushes a quick view onto the navigator. This triggers the re-rendering of the quick view using the new item on the stack. If you recall previously, I was popping those things off the stack, but now I'm pushing them onto the stack. The last step is to update the card view, so to display that a trip has been booked. So let's come back over to our card view. And let's add in a few more conditions here into our status. For example, let's grab the location, let's grab if it's en route, and let's also grab if it's hired, the strings that we're using for all of those. And we're going to update our switch statement, and we're just going to replace the whole thing. Now remember, we have one for when the status is set to available, but watch what happens once I add all of these in. So here we have our available, which we've already seen that one. But now if it's en route, then we're going to say view the pickup location is going to be one button will display. And if they choose that option, it'll use the show location action to display the location of where we're going. If they're currently hired, then we'll also give them an option to view the drop-off location as well. And they're all going to be, all these changes will conditionally display different buttons and text that are depending on the state of the current shuttle driver. Now, the last thing we want to do with this is update the data method. So in this case here, we have available for hire, but now I want to update the condition here because our condition is going to then say, well, if you're not available for hire, then let's check the state the status of the current trip, is it equal to en route? And if it is, then we're going to display the person is booked, and then we'll just write out whatever the string is we use for that, en route to pickup. But if it's not the case, then I want to do another check. Do we have the current trip? We know that they're on the way somewhere then, because if they're not, if they are not available, and if they're not en route, then that means they're actually been hired and they actually have a passenger in the car. So let's check to see if we have the destination name. And if we do, what I would like to say is they've been hired. I'm driving the passenger to, and then whatever the location was, this .state.current trip .destination name. Otherwise, we don't know where we're driving them to. So I'll just say we're driving them to destination. Oh, and this should be a semicolon. Now let's test out the entire experience. So I'll stop the web server and restart it just to make sure we pick up our latest code and everything builds correctly. All right, so let's refresh the page. And let's see how this works. So in this case here, we have our list item still set. So let's go into preview mode. So what I'm going to do, notice here though, we're in the medium view. Well, we've got a chance of having two buttons here, but the only way two buttons are going to show up is if we're looking at this in the large view of the card. So I'm going to switch this to the large view to make sure we can see both of them. Now, I'm going to start by selecting book a trip, and I'm going to choose to set a trip origin on the map. Now to do that, that opens up my next quick view that I pushed onto the stack. So I'll say select a location on the map. And if I've never given my browser or this site access to my location settings, then I need to go grant it I need to go grant the browser access to that. So I'll say allow. So I'll do book a trip. I'll start that over again, and I'll say select a location on the map. So what I'll do is I'll pick this location on the map to say this is where I currently want to be picked up. So I'll say share location. And then I'm going to specify where I want to go. So I'll then pick set the trip destination. That opens up a new quick view. Now I can choose by a location on the map. We just saw how to do that, but instead let's choose from an existing location. So I'll choose the hub, and then I'll save my location. What this will do is this will pop this card off of the stack to re-render back our campus shuttle. And in this case here, I'll then go over here and just say we're starting the trip. So I'm not even en route somewhere. So I'll say I'm starting the trip, and then I'll save my changes. And here we can see now that my card has been updated to show that I've currently been hired. I'm driving a passenger to the hub location. And if I come back over here to my list settings and I look at the data for my campus shuttle, we can see that Megan is currently driving someone. She's been hired, and she's driving from this location, these GPS coordinates, to this location right here. So now we can see everything that we've implemented to go collect that information. Let's go back and add some additional functionality of when we're currently en route to a passenger pickup or when the driver's been hired. So what I'm going to do now is create a new view, a new quick view that's called my update card. .json. And what this is going to do is either if I'm en route to someone and they cancel the trip, I want to give them the option to cancel it, or I'm going to indicate that I've picked them up. So let's go implement that by creating a new quick view here called my update trip. And I will implement this. And what you'll see here is that we're simply going to say update the existing trip, and this card opens up, and it's going to have a couple buttons on it. One button will be to cancel, and one button will be to mark as a pickup. And so if it's a pickup, all we're doing is getting the current trip, changing it to hired, and then saving our changes, and then closing the adaptive card. But if there's a cancel, we got to do something else. Now, our project needs some sort of a confirmation step if the driver wants to cancel or delete the trip, either by canceling it or by delivering the passenger. So to implement this, let's do like a dynamic quick view. So we're going to have like a confirmation that we're going to use that'll dynamically handle both of these cases. So what I'm going to do is create yet another card here. So my template folder, we'll create a new file called confirmationcard.json. And when I paste this in, we'll have a title message that we have, a description, and then we'll just say whatever the title of the thing is that we're doing. Now, to implement that, I'm going to come over here and create a new quick view file. I'm going to paste in some code here for our card. Now, if you notice what this does is all I'm doing is I'm going to make this dynamic where I'm getting the title that's being passed in. I'm going to change it to the first letter to whatever the title is as a for the confirmation type to either cancel or say that I've delivered the passenger. I'm going to change that to uppercase. So it's either cancel or it's complete are the two options that we have here. There's the card that we're going to render out. And then I'm going to do my confirmation. So if it's confirm, so in other words, I'm confirmed that I'm doing whatever I want to do, I'm just going to delete the list item because if I cancel or if I've dropped them off, I'm deleting the item from the list. And then in that case, I'm just going to set the status back to available and close the quick view. So to use these two new quick views, I'm going to come back over here to my interface and add in references to these. Or so not my interface, my barrel. So there's updating the trip and there's my confirmation quick view. I'll come back over here to my adaptive card extension and I will add those as imports. We have our confirmation quick view and our update trip quick view. And now, even though I only imported 2, I'm actually going to create 3 new IDs. One for cancel, one for complete, and one for update. Now remember, the cancel and the complete, that's kind of like a dual purpose quick view. Let me show you how I'm going to use this. What I'm going to do is in the registration for the quick view on the navigator, I'm going to go ahead and paste these in. And notice here that I'm pasting in the same thing, but I'm passing into the constructor either if it's a cancellation confirmation or if it's the trip has been completed confirmation. So let's implement this. So over here in our card view, I'm going to go pull those in, those new IDs in. So there's my cancel, there's my complete. Yeah, cancel and complete are the 2 that I need. And then in the en route status, the 3 status, so in my en route status, I want to add in another action. So instead of just viewing the pickup location, I'm going to want to add in another one for updating the trip. And that was an import I was supposed to grab in. Actually, I don't want the cancel here. I just want the update. That's right. And once I've been hired, I want to add in another item that's returned back for completing the trip. And we want to do one more thing on our update trip quick view. I want to implement what happens when they cancel. So what I'm going to do is I need to add in a quick view here. So if they say they want to cancel, I want to confirm that they're going to cancel. And so what I'm going to do is down when they say they want to cancel the quick view, here we go, right here. I'm going to say this.quickviewnavigator.push cancel. We're going to do the cancel confirmation. So let's test this out. So let's restart our web server to make sure that we've picked everything up. There we go. And let's refresh the page. Okay, there we go. So now let's preview this. Let's view the drop-off location. Now we have it implemented so we can see where the user said they wanted to be dropped off. Remember, we were starting right here. Now they said they wanted to go to the hub, which is right over here. And then if I want to complete the trip, I'll just click complete trip. It's going to ask me if I want to confirm that. I say yes. And what we should see is our status should go back to available and our item should disappear from the list. And it does. Okay, now let's do this again. So let's book another trip. Choose an origin will be right here. The destination, let's choose a different destination, the student union. I'll save that change. And then I'll say we are en route to pick up and save our trip. Now we can see that it's been booked. I'm en route to the pickup. I can see where am I going. By clicking this button, it would do the exact same thing we saw earlier. And then on update trip, this is where I can say that I'm either canceling it or I've picked them up. And if I pick them up, I will then be hired. Sure enough, now I'm hired, driving the passenger to the rights union. So in this exercise, we created a SharePoint framework adaptive card extension with the primary text card option that used some of the geolocation capabilities that we have in Viva Connections.